Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we've got Tony Sullivan from the Astro core team. Tony, how you doing?
Hey, Jason, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm super excited to have you on the show. I have been following the Astro project for I think almost its entire lifespan. I've been a big fan and up to the point where I recently took a contract working with y'all, and I'm very excited about everything we've been able to do together. And y'all just had a big release, but before we talk about Astro, I want to talk a little bit about you. So for folks who aren't familiar with your work, can you give us a bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah. So I'm mostly a front-end developer these days. So at Astro, I joined about a year ago. I think I'm coming up on a year in February, actually. I've done a little bit of everything over the years. I've been in software for, I think, 13 years now. So everything from database migration tools to front-end real-time games, some native apps. I was the entirety of a Windows Phone team for a mobile app at one point.
That's yeah, the team of one is always a fun game to play.
It is. I had fun booking like the largest conference room in the office for a team meeting a few times just to sit in there by myself and look important.
Good, good. Um, and let's see, yeah, we got some folks coming in from the team. I see Jimena, I see Fuzzy. What's up, everybody? And then some friends of the show out here today: George, Adrian, Kelvin. What's up, everyone? Hello. Thank you for hanging out. All right, so Astro 2.0 just dropped this week. That is very exciting. How long has that been in the making?
Oh, well, we released the first version 1.0 last July, I think it was. And we made it about 4 months before we started hitting things. We were like, is this a breaking change? Do we need to think about another major here? Which was pretty good. We got quite a few things fixed and updated before we really started hitting that commitment. We started talking about 2.0 really strongly, I think, in November, December timeframe. So it was a pretty quick turnaround from us saying, I think we need a breaking change to actually getting it out the door and tested and everything.
Yeah, I guess that's always the way it goes, right? You think it's going to be nice and fat. Like you're, oh, this is it. This is the last time we're ever going to change this code.
Yep. This API is perfect. Why would we ever change this?
Yeah, the final dot actually final v1. But so okay, so as you kind of released V1 and started seeing that, oh, we're going to need to make this change, it's going to be a breaking change. What were the biggest, like, I guess, what were the biggest pain points you saw in V1 that drove toward this 2.0 release?
Well, so one of the main features, and I think what we'll end up talking about later, is the content collections API that we dropped with part of 2.0. And that really this is kind of our second iteration of Astro dealing with content. We used to have an astro.fetchContent API, which kind of went after the same thing. Like, how do you load local files? How do you find
Mm-hmm.
Markdown easily? How do we like fix that developer experience? We pulled that out. I think it was deprecated before the 1.0 release. And there were a couple of changes to like really get that right. There were some changes we wanted to make in the API surface.
Right.
So that was one of the bigger pushing ones, the hybrid rendering one. There were a couple of smaller changes. There actually wasn't nearly as much. That was more of a feature addition. I think there was one tiny API tweak that was almost under the covers.
Oh, nice.
But the content collections one was really a big deal. Bumping for
Yeah.
Veep 4.0 too.
Veep 4.0, that's always a nice, like, when you get a major in the kind of the
Yeah.
underlying tooling. And that, I don't know if it was Veep 4.0 that brought this or something else, but you also have hot module reloading now, right? Or did you already have
Yep.
it?
Yeah. We we've had that, and it's been a long running project. It's one of those where you can never get it just perfect, and there's
Sure.
always bugs that come up, and it's really hard to test. So occasionally you break it and you don't realize you broke it.
Yeah.
Um, it's there was a period of time, especially leading up to 1.0, where there was a lot of code flying around, and HMR was kind of this ever moving target that we could just not nail down. And we
Mm.
feel really, really good about where it is now. And part of that actually was due to some of the under the covers changes from Veep.
That's great. That's great. I mean, and I
Yep.
feel like that's one of those things that, like, obviously we can live without it. Like, I've been able to live without hot module reloading for the vast majority of my career, but once you have it, you're like, I don't ever want to not have this again. Like, it's just so nice
Yeah.
to know that I made that change and everything's just running. I'm not worried that it's magical.
Yeah.
So what else? I want to spend a little more time talking about hybrid rendering and the content collections, but let's run through a couple of the other, like, the high level things. So we got V4.0. We got a much more rock solid HMR implementation. What else is happening in Astro 2.0?
Oh, geez, there's a long list of really small changes. The other big one that was just such a nice like developer experience fix was our new error overlays, which sounds like such a small thing, like, oh great, errors look better, but it makes a huge difference. Erica on our
Mm-hmm.
team spent a ton of time really cleaning all of that up and bubbling up errors in nice ways. Our design team actually, we went through a full design cycle for that error overlay window, and like
That's awesome.
we have Figma designs just for that. Our docs team did a bunch of work and partnering with Erica, trying to like hook up so an error shows up and you actually get docs on what the specific error was that can tell you why and how to fix it and all that kind of stuff. So that one I think is up there with what feels maybe like just a DX fix, but it is a huge like time saver
You
when
know,
you're building with Astro.
this is a pattern that I've noticed with Astro, and it's one of the things that I think has been a big source of your strength in terms of kind of growing adoption in the community is you don't skip those details. So these error messages are a big deal, and one of the it's not new in 2.0, but the CLI in Astro is just out of control good. Like, there's a detail that is one of my favorite. We'll look at this later when we actually get to coding, but I'm going to talk through it because I think it's so important. There is a part of the CLI where you can add a plugin, like you can add React, you can add Tailwind, you can add whatever you want. And when you do that, it doesn't just add it, right? It's adding the module to your package.json. It is updating your Astro config. It's maybe updating, your TypeScript config or whatever if it's necessary. And that in and of itself is very, very cool. And also, you take the time to show me the changes that are going to be made in my config files and let me confirm those so that, like, as a developer, one of the things that makes me skittish about using generators or things like that is I get this fear that somebody's about to dump a bunch of code into my code base that I will then have to check into Git and maintain. And so
Yep.
taking that extra step to show me what am I about to inflict on my repo by running this command just eliminates all my fear. Because, for an Astro plugin, at least every one that I've run has been a maximum of 4 lines of code changed, which is great because I'm cool. I can handle that. You're just saving me the effort of having to go in and like copy paste the import, React from Astro.js React. Like, it's just little convenience things like that. And that's so pleasant in a world of like, well, yeah, you just learn that after you've done it a couple times, you know what it does. I'm like, okay, but maybe just show me once.
Yeah. Yeah, I got so used to the habit over the years of like making sure my Git repository locally was totally clean,
Mhm.
that I had no changes. So as soon as I run one of those cogen tools, I can at least see what all changed before I commit it.
Right.
And it's nice not having to do that with Astro. I think part of it is just like a nice benefit of how we design the integrations API.
Mm.
It's really powerful, and you can basically just add, like you said, 2, 3, 4 lines of code in the config file, and that 95% of the time does all you need.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that at some point in the future, it'd be fun to do a follow-up episode where we build one of those integrations
Yeah.
because it's so seamless. It just now occurred to me that I could build something to like modify the behavior of Astro because in my head I was like, well, I'm just turning on React. Like, no, there's code under that thing.
The framework ones are interesting too, like adding React or Vue or Svelte.
I
Those
bet.
integrations get really tricky because going back to the HMR feature, like we lean on Svelte's HMR. That's piped through Astro. When you change a Svelte component and Vite recompiles it, Astro helps feed that over to the site, and your Svelte component changes with the existing state. Like that's not an easy bit of code to hook up.
Yeah, that is excellent. Oh, and I just saw that the chat started a hype train. Thank you all for the subs. Jimena, thank you for gifting. Obina, Chris, thank you all very, very much. Anarchy, good username. At least I hope that that's I hope I'm not just like, yes, your name sounds like a word in English, and I'm now making fun. Sorry, if I just made fun of your name, I'm very sorry. Okay, so let's talk more. Okay, before I do this, is there anything else you want to highlight new feature-wise before I dive back into hybrid rendering and content collections?
Oh, as soon as we get off the call, I'm going to realize 20 different things that I missed and could have gone over, but I think we've hit the highlights. I'm looking back at our blog post. I think I've at least covered the highlights here.
Great. Yeah. And we should all be reading this blog post because it is chock full of all the information. Let me find it's still learning how to type on this keyboard. It's going to be a fun day. Here's the blog. So we are going to drop this link in here so that everybody can see. There you go. All right. So let's talk a little bit about hybrid rendering, because this is something that kind of surprised me about Astro, because I had always thought of Astro as being the static, it was like the holy grail for static site generators, because it was fast, it could use any framework, it gave me, Node.js by default. And so when I heard that Astro could do SSR, and when I heard that Astro could do hybrid rendering now in 2.0, I kind of did a double take, like, wait, when did they add SSR? So I want to talk a little bit about this because that means that Astro is actually capable of more than it. I mean, not just like the vast majority of the internet is static websites. So let's not kid ourselves, everybody. But it sounds like Astro is also capable of doing the dynamic sites as well if it's got SSR and hybrid rendering. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is hybrid rendering? If I'm being completely honest, I'm not sure I've heard that term.
Yeah, we actually had a big discussion internally of how we even wanted to set that up. So Astro, like you said, started out being just static, right? The whole point from the beginning was we're going to start from a static site generator and then start layering on like server rendering and SSR support later, with us basically just taking the gamble that it's going to be easier to go static first and build on top, rather than starting with SSR and then trying to layer static builds on top of that in some way. But once we landed SSR support, which I think was last spring, Matthew on our team, Matthew Phillips, really spearheaded getting that one in. And it was always just kind of a switch. So you either were building a static site or you were doing fully server-side rendered. And we always kind of knew we wanted to have an in-between, and we didn't know how we were going to do it. That's kind of where we landed with hybrid rendering. So the big question for us was, are you wanting your project to start static and like opt into one endpoint being serverless? Or are you wanting to make your whole project SSR and basically opting into a couple of pages being static? So we landed on that one, mainly looking at, kind of how most people are going to that need SSR support. They probably want a static like homepage. They want their landing page to be really fast, totally statically rendered. But a majority of their site, maybe they really do need SSR support. They're doing a lot of custom kind of user specific rendering, like maybe it's an e-commerce site and they really want to be checking stock availability for products and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where we landed. Hybrid is basically you flip your site to SSR, but you can per route say this is actually going to be static, and it'll spit out an HTML page, just like you're building with 11D or Astro's SSG mode, any of those kind of tools.
And when you build, like when you say this page is going to be static, you don't lose any of the things that you can use in Astro. You can still selectively hydrate a React component, or put a solid JS like mini app in that page. It's just client side rendered, like it would be in an Astro site, the way that I have used it in the kind of SSG mode.
Yeah, so it works exactly the same basically as using our full SSG mode. If there are React components on that page and they can be server rendered, they will, and then they'll hydrate in the client just like you normally would if you use kind of our client hydration scripts. The only difference, I've been messing around with this recently, actually updating my own site. The only difference really is you do export const, I think it's pre-render is true. You're setting one flag in your front matter saying, I want to pre-render this page. You don't have to worry about client versus server. You don't have to worry about like jumping through hoops to do anything different to get that support.
That's great, because one of my I think one of my pet peeves when I'm working with a lot of frameworks is that because they're focused on this idea of like hybrid rendering, the challenge becomes that they're building a mental model where everything is the same until you hit the edges where it's not. And then you're creating like a dot server or a dot client file. And like, this isn't bad, but it's a thing that you just kind of have to know, and it's hard. And so minimizing that, where by default, you know, it's always the same file. It's always kind of doing the same thing that you would expect. And then you have to explicitly opt into different behaviors that add that complexity. That meshes really well with my sort of preferences and worldview as a you know, weather dev that I really
as
want
a well-weathered developer.
Because what I really want is I want the choices to default to the simplest mental model available. And you know, this is again like saying simple not in the context of easy, but simple as in the context of fewest moving parts.
Right.
And so I think I like this approach of, you know, you start, it's static by default. You opt in to server-side rendering, and then within the server-side rendering, you can opt into individual routes being static. And it's kind of nice to know that you're like layering your complexity through an opt-in system instead of trying to opt out of complexity because you don't need it, which I think has been the default in a lot of frameworks these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the ability to like quickly look through your code and not have to hold this giant map of where does my endpoint live? Where is my data loading going? Where, you know, what's server, what's client? It's nice not having to do that most of the time. And if your app gets a little more complex, you still could, but you don't have to.
Yeah. I think that is yes, exactly. Like rule of least power, right? Like I'm building a homepage for my website. I don't need anything. I just want it to load as fast as possible so that when somebody runs the lighthouse test, nobody can like screenshot it and make fun of me on Twitter. You know, like that's all I care about with a homepage on a website, right? And so like then when I get into the app side of things, like sure, then I want more functionality. I want to opt into that so that I can say, hey, the app it's a dashboard. Everything needs to load fresh on every page load, and like that's important. But making that the default and then trying to like wrestle my homepage to be fast is just kind of hard.
Yeah.
And so that then I think is kind of a clunky segue, but I'm going to use it to talk about content collections, because another thing that I have found as a developer is that I tend to default to Markdown for my content, because setting up a CMS is time, right? And I love CMSs. Like I use Sanity for a bunch of stuff. I like Asura. I like Contentful does good work if you're working with big teams, and like there's a million great CMSs out there in the world. And if I'm working as a solo dev, the effort to set up a whole CMS so that I can edit my blog doesn't feel worth it. I just want to write that in Markdown because I'm in GitHub anyways, and I know how to write Markdown. It's kind of second nature to me because I've written a million READMEs. So why wouldn't I blog in that, right? And the trade-off has always been that Markdown is just sort of full-blown chaos in your GitHub repo, because your front matter's there, you throw whatever you want in it, you completely forget what you did. Your next blog post has a different set of front matter in it. And you just like, if I look back through my blogs over time, going back to 2014, 2013, when I made my first Markdown powered blog, it is a tragic tale of no consistency through the front matter in those. And content collections, solve too strong a word?
Oh man, that would just start Twitter wars if I told you that we solved Markdown. I'm not doing that, Jason.
I'm going to do it.
You're not
Astro
walking me into
solved
that trap.
Markdown, everyone.
The interesting thing with like when to use Markdown versus a CMS for me, like you said, it's when it's just you dealing with it. Markdown's easier. It's local files. I don't have to worry about like setting up a staging environment to test out new content posts. It's local. Like until I push it to Git, it's staging, I guess, because it's not live. And the tricky thing, I was just rebuilding my blog the last few days, actually moving to this content collections API. I have like 30 blog posts or something. And I found the same thing. I was like, oh, I misspelled that front matter name. That's supposed to say date, and it doesn't. Or why did I call this one tags and the other one collections? I don't know. I just did that day.
Yeah.
And it silently breaks most of the time, right? Because it's, hopefully I'm handling that tags doesn't exist. It doesn't blow up my website when it tries to build statically, but the tags aren't there, and I wanted the tags to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's been a challenge for me too, because like, I'll have a blog post, like a very real recent use case is when I went solo as like Learn with Jason, the business. I wrote a blog post where I wanted my newsletter opt-in to be in the middle, because I specifically called it out. Like I'm going to be doing more. You can get more details on the newsletter. And then a couple paragraphs later, the post ends, and I didn't want to double newsletter opt-in, right? So I added a front matter field that was like show opt-in, and I set it to false. And none of the other posts have that. And so, my logic is there and it's fine, but I will never remember that I did that.
Right.
Like I am never going to remember that post has that. And the next time that I do it, I'm going to start implementing that feature again before I notice that there's already code. And then I'll go, oh yeah, I made front matter for that. And so the thing that's exciting about this in content collections is, so I think I want to talk about the future goals for these two, but the current status of content collections is that you are providing developers with type-safe markdown front matter. So I can define the exact schema, and not just like the schema like what I'm gonna use, but the schema like what I will accept. Like I can throw an error if I add a markdown field that's not accounted for. I can throw an error if I like a really bad problem with like tags, for example, right? Is what I would call the ever expanding bowl of tag soup, where everybody just kind of adds whatever they want and you don't really look at what's there before, and it just breaks and breaks and breaks. So with content collections, I can set an enum and say only these tags are allowed, and that gives me the ability to like tags and then check my autocomplete, and it'll show me a list of the available tags right there in my IDE. And if I want to add a new one, I got to go update the schema, and that's fine. I can do that. I'm a dev. But it prevents me from like having one tagged as like idea and another tagged as ideas, which is something I do constantly in my tag. It's honestly led me to stop using tags because I always duplicate the tags in very similar ways. And this is like just a data management problem, right? But by being able to enforce it through something like type-safe front matter and using actual TypeScript types in that, I get the benefit of like, I don't need self-control. I have a robot to kind of bat me down and say, you can't do that, right? And then if I'm willing to go and change the robot, that's fine because it's important, but I can't accidentally make a mess of my code, which I feel like is the biggest risk of Markdown, really.
Yeah. Yeah, even simple things like dates, right? In Markdown, a date is really a string. It isn't a date object. There's actually no validation there unless you do it yourself. It's just a string. And it's very nice starting to see tooling come in that can make sure when you mean for it to be a date, it's actually a date.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a very subtle but huge improvement in my life, is when if I forget to put a date in, I want it to throw an error. I don't want it to just accidentally drop it to the bottom of my list of blog posts. If I forget to categorize it, or I use a category that nothing else is categorized as, I want it to tell me like, hey, did you mean to create a category that doesn't exist? and then I have to say, oh
Yep.
yeah, I did mean to do that, or no, right? Like
Yep.
these are all the things that are just such nice little quality of life benefits that you can get from a CMS if you go in and configure your CMS and then log into that CMS to edit. But as a developer, as a team of one, it often feels like overkill to go in and do that. As developers on a team of only developers, like if everybody on the team writes Markdown all day, setting up a CMS and then asking devs to get out of GitHub and into CMS, no matter how good the CMS is, it's a context switch. But we're all
Right.
in Markdown all day. We're all in GitHub all day. So if your team is a like Markdown native team, now we can use these content collections to like make things a little less chaotic, even if multiple people are maintaining the Markdown blog. So when I saw this for content collections, I got really excited, and I know that Ben Holmes was sort of the driving force behind putting content collections together. So as you're looking at this, how do you see this evolving over time? Right? Like, is content collections, you're at Markdown and you're done, or do you see this expanding?
So we've always kind of, as long as I joined Astro, and even when I was just a community member before that, this team just put such a focus on like primitives that we're building into Astro. So we're not solving the world from day one. We're trying to build building blocks that are like the basic layer. Right. And that's kind of what we have done so far with this first version of content collections. It's just like cracking open the door on type validation for Markdown, and how you can easily manage content that you're using to build different pages on your site. The next step, there's interesting questions we have around like, how do we want these content items to reference each other? So you can't really do that right now because that's a tricky problem, right? But you will have a collection of blog posts and a collection of authors maybe, and you want those to reference each other so that you're not copying the author information across 100 different posts. There's interesting questions that I'm looking forward to us digging into more around images, treating images as content instead of just like a single asset file, right? What would it look like if images was its own collection holding metadata, including the file path, but also, width and height and format and upload date and all that kind of stuff, right? Where we go past that, I'm not really sure. We'll just kind of have to see where it goes, how people use content collections. What are people really starting to build on top of it, so that we're not getting out ahead of ourselves and trying to solve the world with problems that really don't exist in the first place.
And for a dev who is really thinking about how they want to use content collections, where's the best place for them to voice their, like, this is my use case, this is what I want to do?
Our Discord is really, really active. Okay. If you go to astro.build, I think it's astro.build/chat, redirects to our Discord. It's very, very active and very welcoming. If people come in all the time with questions and how do I do this, or I'd love to have this feature. We just recently, like within the last couple of weeks, have been revamping our RFC process to really like help users of Astro bubble up feature ideas and requests and really discuss like how they want to be able to use it.
And for folks who've never heard of that, what is an RFC?
It stands for request for comment, I believe. I always thought it was request for change, but I think it's request for comment. And that really is kind of like the building in public version of like open source. We're asking people, what are the features you would like us to build? Usually the RFC process, someone's proposing an issue or like a feature they need, and hopefully following it up with like a potential solution so that we can really start that conversation. So it's not just, the Astro core team sitting in a hole deciding what features should we build. We're really getting to, pull in user engagement and ideas and opinions. And it always makes it better. Like the more eyes and brains you have working on these things, the better solutions you come up with.
So for somebody who's not part of the Astro core team, which is, I guess there's a few different Astros, right? There's Astro, the company. There's Astro, the open source project, which has a core team. And then there's Astro, the community. And so for somebody who wants to get involved in the community and maybe work their way up to the core team, they can just go and look at these RFCs on GitHub. And potentially, if they have a proposal, they can propose an idea as an RFC for what they'd like Astro to be. and there's not like a barrier to entry on that. You don't have to, be this tall to ride or anything. It's like anybody in the community can come in
Right.
and have, like, they can have an opinion, they can have an idea.
Yep.
Obviously, like, you have to get consensus, you have to convince people it's a good enough idea for it to actually happen, but your participation is whatever. You can just go, like, you're today already, you're welcome, you can sit with us, come have an idea.
Yeah, for sure. And the RFC process itself is really developer focused more of the time, more often than not, because you're talking about like a specific technical problem that you want to solve or the solution for it. But there's so many people, so many ways that people get actually involved in the Astro community. Our docs team has a ton of active community engagement, even for things like translating our entire doc site. Most of
That's so
those
awesome.
PRs, most of those pull requests come through community members. That there was somebody, I think it was maybe when it got translated to Japanese, but somebody came through and was just like, "Hey, I translated the whole site. Where do I upload it?" It's
Amazing.
crazy.
I
It's
love
so
that.
crazy.
That's so,
Yeah.
and it's great too to see a project that gains enough momentum that somebody's like, you know what, I'm frustrated not reading this in my first language. I'm going to make this into my first language so that I can read the docs more easily. Like, it's just such a
Right.
cool thing to see. And when you've got an active community that's into that, it's like, it's magic. So congrats to
Yeah.
y'all on building a community like that. But okay, we are about 30 minutes in, and I want to make sure we've got plenty of time to actually build. So I'm going to switch us over into pair programming mode. I'm going to clear a couple things off the screen first so that it's not disconcerting when we get over there. And all right, here we go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to, I've already shared this link, but this is the Astro 2.0 blog if you want all of the details on what we're doing today. This episode, like every episode, is being live captioned. We've got a closed caption button on the show itself. Once this loads, come on in there. Oh no, I got to start it. Okay, the closed captions will start working right now. Jeez. Okay, this is going to be kind of wild. Yep, there they go, all the way back. They are also available on the homepage right here, and you can turn these on with the CC button on Twitch, and they are also available on the homepage. And that is being done by Rachel at White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here today. That is made possible through the support of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, NX, New Relic, Pluralsight, all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people, which I very deeply appreciate. We are talking to Tony today. Tony, you're not really active on Twitter. Do you want me to even share your Twitter?
You can share it. I maybe open it once a month. So if somebody wants to tweet at me, comment, I will see it sometime in February.
All right, here we go. Go follow Tony on the old Twitter and have a month lag in your conversations with him.
We're all async remote workers these days, right?
Yeah. And now you're also really big on indieweb too, right? Like, that's kind of your thing. So this is a bit of a tangent before we start, but I heard you're cooking up something that might be sort of in the social vein, but more indieweb.
Yeah. The content collections opens up your doors for what we can do with indie web stuff. Basically, I've gone way too far down the rabbit hole of like, how can I self-host anything I make on my own webpage? And there's a bunch of specs going back to like 2005, maybe, of like open source content types for like articles and notes. I've been playing around on my site and trying to see if it would even be useful, but to try and make like an indie web collections helper for Astro using the new content collections API.
Oh, very cool.
We also do have a new theme that we'll be building hopefully sometime soon that just our design team just finished up, that is going to be a social feed kind of feel. So I know Adam Argyle just recently rebuilt his site to where it looks like his own Twitter feed. And my homepage does something kind of similar. We're actually going to build a starter theme to let people do that if they want to. And then I'm probably going to sneak a few indie web micro formats into the theme so that it's all supported that way. I want to say it's nerdy.dev.
All right, let's check it out. Oh, this is cool. So it's like blog posts, or you can go to notes, which looks sort of like Yeah, like microblogging, what you would post on a social media network.
Yep.
Things about CSS, things about Git. Oh, this is brilliant. Like
It's very, very
this is
cool.
what I keep waiting for a social media tool to give me. So the fact that I never considered I could just build my own is that's a big miss on my part. This is great. I could do this. Now this is wonderful. All right, so for anybody who wants to see this, that is here. We've had Adam on the show before. In fact, we talked about CSS. What was it called? CSS Open Props here.
Yeah, open props.
And this was a super fun episode. If you are interested in what it would look like if something like Tailwind existed, but it was all like CSS variables instead of utility classes. It's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I've pulled up the content collections API here, and I am ready. I want to try something out. So I think it would be really fun today. Let's build out a blog. Let's use the content collections, and I want to look at some of those tricky types that have tripped me up in the past. That like the errant fields, getting things spelled wrong, but also when we get types. You mentioned dates. I mentioned like a list of categories where I start adding nonsense and like duplicative stuff. So maybe we can put something together that'll help us solve that. So if I want to do that, how should I start?
Oh, I would use create Astro to start a new project. So if you're using npm, I think it's npm init Astro.
Okay.
If you're using pnpm, I think it's npm create Astro. They all have different syntaxes for whatever reason.
npm init. Here we go. All right.
There's
So
Houston.
2.0.1. There's Houston. I also just absolutely love this. So let's call this Astro Content Collections Live, because I already have an Astro Content Collections version. Which flavor should we be using here?
Oh, I like starting with an empty project because I like building my own CSS styles, but the basics or the personal starter kit have some nice styles built in if you are looking for that.
Great. I'm also going to put this this keyboard window over here so everybody can watch me struggle with my ErgoDocs. Okay, so I'm going to choose. How about we go with the recommended one, because why not? And that way we'll get a couple base styles, because we're not falling down the rabbit hole of writing CSS for the entire hour.
Let's debate BEM for a minute, though.
All right, so I have my site open. I'm gonna close that down, and then I definitely need to close that down. And yep, close that down too. Boy, I left like all my personal stuff up on the wrong window today. All right, so would I like to install npm dependencies? I would. So here we go. Would I like to initialize a new Git repository? I would. I'll use strict TypeScript. It's just so like it's little attention to detail like this. Like again, we were talking about the DX, and like, does this matter? Probably not in the grand scheme of things, but does it make me like Astro more? 1000% yes. Like it's just, it's almost the same as everything else out there, but it's just slightly more charming, and I just dig that a lot. So let's go into the content collections live, and I'm going to just open this one up. We will open this in my browser, or in my code thingy. All right. So we've got a favicon in the public folder, nothing else. And then we have a couple basic pieces in here. And it looks like this is, we haven't added any plugins or anything. We have a base layout. So I'll start this, and we'll, it's npm run dev, right?
Run dev, yep.
All right, so we're going to do an npm run dev. Copy this, head over here, and here we go. Here's our basic site. So I want to add a blog, and we can put the blog on the homepage, and maybe we'll just use this card as our blog so
Yeah,
that we don't have to style
make it our
anything.
blog index.
Yeah. All right. So I think I'm ready then. I want to replace these with links to our blog posts. And to do that, I need to, I think, create my first content collection. So what should I do first?
I'd pull up the docs. I would never do as good a job explaining this in real time as our docs team did, building out these walkthroughs. So on the left, we have going straight to the search. I think that is
always to the search. I can never, I always like forget which top level heading it is. And then I'm like, oh no, it's in here somewhere. And then I'm panicking. So I just, rather than chat having to yell up, down, no, up one.
Yeah. While there's like a half-second delay, just enough to mess with the up-down demands. All right, so these docs will really walk you through getting it totally set up. It starts out kind of explaining what content collections even are, which we've kind of talked a little bit about them. There's a lot of really good detail in here kind of in how they work. But if you're curious about getting it started, let's see. There's a section called Defining Collections, and that actually has a little code snippet in there with an example for, I think, actually for a blog collection. So that'll be a good start.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to pull this over to the left, like so. I'm going to create a new file, and that's it was in content, and then config.ts.
Yep.
Right, okay. Collapse this down. And I think I lost my place when I did this. Defining collections, here we go. So in here, we're going to import define collection from Astro content. Okay, now I don't have this yet, and that's because we haven't... what do we have to do to get this set up?
See, is the dev server running right now?
The dev server is running right now, and it says types generated. So it could just be that I need to close this and then open it again. Oops. Now it's happy. No, it's not.
Define collections is defined but never used. I think is that all I was complaining about?
I'm not sure. Let's see. It seems... Yeah, you know what? Let's try it. So we're going to export const, oh boy, collections, and that is an object, and that has a blog, which is define collection. And I'm like kind of smashing these two pieces together. I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea. It makes sense in my brain to like have the collection name and like what the definition is together. Yep. I bet I would change my tune on this if I had multiple collections though. So then upon doing this, still not quite happy here. And I'm wondering, it says the types are blog is not a collection. Check your content config for typos. That's okay, because we knew that would happen. And I'm feeling like this is one of those cases where maybe I need to stop and restart the server or something to get it to stop complaining.
You could always try that. It should pick it up since the types were built by the dev server, but you never know. Turning the power off and turning the power on again always solves problems, right?
I truly, yep, there it is. So that was it. It just needed to get turned off and on again.
Check the power plug.
Now we're ready. So if I want to define my schema, we can kind of start by thinking through what's actually going to be in one of these, right? Like if we're thinking about what my front matter would look like, because I saw from the the docs up here like we do a source content and then a folder. So I'm going to create a folder called blog. And then inside of that, I'm going to create my first post, and we'll just do, you know, like first.md. And inside of here, we can start thinking through our markdown. And, you know, this will have like, we'll keep it simple here. So there's a few things that we want to check. We know we want to have a date. We know we wanted to have, I wanted to try something with categories. And we want that to be an array. We probably want to have a title for our blog post, or is it going to pick up this as the title if I?
It won't. No, it just parses it parses front matter as data, and the actual content inside the post it deals with a bit differently.
Got it. Anything else? What else should we put in here if we're trying to show this off and keep it simple at the same time?
We have date. I was going to say some kind of URL, but if we have date, I don't know if it's actually that useful because it's the same kind of problem. Okay. Of like converting from a string to something type safe. So date, categories, title, they're probably the easiest ones.
Okay. All right. Let's start there, and then if we've got some extra time, we'll be able to go clean that up. So I have these, and I want to make sure that I don't make a mess as I go. How would I go about doing that in here?
So we're leaning on a tool called Zod to do all of our kind of like data shape validations, our schema validations. The important thing to know about Zod really is it's a runtime check. So if you just define TypeScript types, it doesn't actually make sure when it runs that the types are right. It just knows that you told it the shape of the object. Zod actually goes a step further, and it will throw errors if the data it's given doesn't match the types you said it should be. So in this case, you need inside of defined collections, you're giving it an object and it needs a key for schema.
Okay, so schema. Got it.
And we're going to give this, you'll need to import Z, which is
let me have
the Zod library. It probably will just find it for you. But it comes in the same Astro
found
content.
But I think because it was one character, it was like, no. And we can see here we're getting all of the different pieces in here. So we've got a whole bunch of different things that it can be. What am I looking for first? Like what type should the schema be?
So the most common thing you're going to start with is going to be z.object. And really for any markdown front matter, it's going to start out as an object.
Okay.
Inside of this, it's the same kind of thing. It's like turtles all the way down. You're defining objects to build out your schema. So like you give it a title, right? And you're expecting that to always be a string.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start at the top. You have, I think it should be date.
See, this is why we need.
Yeah. We need a type checker for our schema types. Something can yell at us on a second layer.
And since you said starting from the top, I am going to put title up top because I think that's going to be the easiest one.
Okay.
Okay. So I want this to be a type. So I'm not setting a value. I'm setting an expectation of what the value conforms to type-wise.
Yep.
Okay.
And it very much aligns with how you would work with TypeScript. You would just be defining a type or an interface and saying title is going to be a string. In the case of Zod, there's helper functions for it, so it's just z.string.
Got it.
And that makes sure, like, if you gave it a Boolean, it would throw an error saying, I thought I wanted a string, and you gave me false.
Mm-hmm. And so then thinking about it that way, then my instinct is that we would set this to be date. And I have a suspicion that my instinct is wrong.
Yes. With Markdown, because dates are actually strings. They aren't like date the object, right? So this would be assuming that it's getting
so
like a JavaScript date object.
If I go in here and do what's today? Today is the 26th. This to me is a date.
Yep.
But as far as it's like this is going to be the string 2023-01-26.
Yep.
So then this is a string, but I don't want it to be a string. I want it to complain if it's not a date.
Right. So you need to first tell Zod this is a string, and they actually have a bunch of chaining. It's almost like, you know, the old jQuery libraries where you can chain everything together. So z.string, and then you can tell this string is actually a date time. So z.string.datetime.
Oh, cool. So we're like major type classification and then a sub classification. So are there others in here, like other sub classifications?
There are string, I think,
Like
has a URL,
here's date
email. There's a bunch of
time,
crazy ones.
email.
CUID is one of their helpers. That's interesting.
Oh wow. Yeah, this is wild. So we've got some definite. Oh, you can do a starts with. That's cool. So you
Yeah.
can do a lot with this that would be. I imagine if Matt Pocock was here, he would say it's possible, but difficult with plain TypeScript types. And also, like you said, this is a
Yeah.
runtime check, so it's not
Yeah.
like once we've built the code, all of our types are compiled away, and now we're just trusting that we did that. This is like I can pass in data from an API, and it's gonna
Yeah.
validate that on the fly. Here's
Yep.
URL UUID. So okay, great. So that's powerful. So I have the title is a string, the date is a date time. That's what I want. And my categories I want to be an array. And so can I
hmm
just set it as an array or do I need like a Zod array?
So you always want to do Zod's kind of helper function. So there should be a
Okay.
z.array. And it actually also can check the types of the objects in there. You're probably just going to be giving it strings. So you can do z.array and then pass it z.string
Okay.
as the like function parameter.
Now I
Yep.
actually think in our blog we want to limit the categories. Like I want to
Yep.
explicitly define my categories. So this feels a little too loose for me.
It's very loose. You could throw any string you wanted to in there and it would create tags on your site for it.
Okay. So
So I think
what if I
I'm
want to
pretty
like do a
sure it's,
predefined category list?
is there a z.enum?
Let's find
Their
out.
naming convention is very on
C.enum.
point. It
Yes.
seems like that
Haha.
would exist.
All right. And then this is just any array of strings. So I can pass in, like, we can say, I don't know, we can do like, what's the digital gardening syntax? It's like, oh, crap. I'm gonna forget all of this now. Um, we'll make up a few. We're gonna go very, very simple on this. We're gonna do like 1, 2, and 3 are our allowed categories. And I'm gonna collapse that sidebar so that we can see all the code that I've written. Um, okay, so a few things are here that I am curious about. One
hmm
is, can I make it like right now? Will it complain if I were to come in here and say like, well, we'll do a hello world. I'm going to do a category of 1 and that feels okay. So that's correct. And theoretically speaking, that's all working. I don't think it's throwing any errors. That's good.
hmm
Um, how do I get it to like? Will it throw an error if I were to do like something like that? Let's see.
I don't
Is it
think
mad
it
at me?
gets checked I don't think it gets checked directly in the Markdown file, which would make for a really interesting addition to like the VS Code plugin.
Ooh,
I know we
oh, so
talked
it's
about that
not
at one
doing the
point, and
validation here. We gotta
right, it
we
does it
gotta
when you
actually load
consume
it.
it. Yep.
Okay, so let's do that then. So we'll get back to actually let me get rid of this at first. We'll start with a valid schema and then we'll figure out how to deal with an invalid schema afterward. So now I want to load this here and I want to replace these cards with my blog posts. So my pseudo code here is I want to map over this and put in the
Yep.
blog's URL, the title, and then for the body we didn't set a body. So we'll just do we get an automatic excerpt or anything from
We won't get an automatic excerpt. You can grab the content of the blog post if you really wanted to know, if you knew
yeah,
they were always
nah,
short, but it'd
we'll
probably
just
be better to do
yeah,
another front
let's
matter property for like summary or
yeah.
description or body.
Summary sounds perfect. And that's going to be like an introduction to the world. Great. Perfect. We've done it. So that means then in here, I need to add a new one, and that's going to be, it was summary, and that is just another string. Okay. And now we also have the ability to do things like if the title, say we want to make sure it's not longer than 100 characters or something, we can do that, right?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like data validation helpers that are in here. It's probably just string.max or max length.
I think it is just string.max, and so we can just pass in 100. And now if we try to make a title over 100, it'll yell at us. Okay, so so now we will get the URL of the post, the title of the post, the summary of the post, and I want to loop over those to display them. So first thing I need to do is I need to actually load the blogs from the content collection onto this page. And I do that by...
So in the front matter, up top where you're importing layout, there's a helper function that's actually auto-generated from the content collections. And you can import, it is get collection from Astro content. Yep.
Okay. Okay, autocomplete to success. And if I'm using my deductive reasoning here, I'm going to make a guess that I would say blogs is going to equal, is it async? Do I need to await it?
It is async, I believe.
Okay.
And nicely enough, we have top level await.
That is amazing. Is this being inferred?
So it absolutely is. That is getting code generated in the background in real time.
Oh,
so it knows you have a collection named
that.
blog. Yeah,
that's dope.
And it gets even more fun because it also knows the file names that exist in that collection. So it knows what slugs you'll find and what slugs, and it knows like you're not going to find some invalid slug that the file doesn't exist.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so then if I want to use this, I can go blogs.map, and I'm going to put in blog. We'll do one of these, and then we'll return one of those. Grab this thing, stick it in here. And so this is where we should really see the magic kind of come in, because what I want to do is not learn anything. And I just want to do blog dot and then see what I've got here. And so I've got data is where the front matter lives, right?
That's right. Yep.
So I go dot data dot, and there's my stuff. Yep. Oh, it's wonderful not to have to know things.
I know. And if you marked something as optional, Zod lets you say like this field might exist, but it's optional. TypeScript knows. It knows that it might be undefined, and it kind of like helps guide you to make sure you handle all those kind of cases.
Ah, that's amazing. Okay, so this one is a little bit different because we didn't define a URL for the blog. I'm assuming that was auto-generated for us. So what is if I want my blog post to live at, let's say, /blog/ whatever the generated slug is of the post, do I have to configure that somewhere, or do I just tell Astro like I want it to be /blog/ and then the slug?
So we give you back from define or from get collection, you'll get the slug, which is a file name where the actual markdown file lives. And from there, so yeah, you could just do a template literal inline /blog/blog.slug.
Okay, and so it's not including like the file path, because we did put it in blog. So it doesn't use this as part of generating the route. It just uses the file name itself.
Right. Now you can actually do nested folders. So you could have a source content blog, a folder for like EN versus ES if you're doing multiple languages. The slug would actually include the whole path under there. So you would know like this is the English version, this is the Spanish version.
Got it. Okay, so then this one is the collection. So this is telling Astro, this is what my collection is, and anything inside of it will be used in the route. So if we really wanted to, we could do /blog/blog, and it would give us the slug with /blog in it. That feels I don't like that, so I'm not going to do that, and
Yeah.
we'll hard code it to the name of the collection.
Yeah.
Is it just going to work when I save this?
It will work, except the page doesn't exist, right? So we haven't actually made the layout for displaying the blog post, but that card list should just work. The links will just be broken.
Oh, something's unhappy.
All
Date
right.
should be a string, not a date. Oh, interesting. What have we done?
Date should be a string, not a date.
Should be a string, not a date. So does Markdown know enough to turn that into a date?
Have I always shot myself in the foot just wrapping it in quotes?
Did I kill it? I killed it. Date time is not a function. That was an invalid thing. Huh. Well, that's cool, though, knowing that okay. So if you do your dates like this, Markdown, and this is remark under the hood?
Yes. Now I'm curious, if you put that in quotes, it would come through as a string and then blow up again, and we would see Zod errors.
Whoops. Oh no, where's my... This is where we find out. Oh God, what am I doing? Here?
I'm making you find the special keys on your new keyboard.
Okay, so there, and I broke it. So we start it again. Reload. Date should be date, not string. Yeah, so if you quote it, then it is a string. If you don't quote it, then it can figure it out for you. That's great. That's awesome. So wonderful. You don't have to do the conversion.
There you go.
So now this is doing the thing. If I click on it, we get a 404. That makes sense. We haven't defined these pages yet. So let's do that. Let's make this work. So I'm going to head back over here, make this a little bit smaller. And now, well, actually, before we get into the page, I want to try that thing again. So we'll do like new thing is false. Save it. Okay, so it doesn't give me an error. And what happens if I do like a blog?
So it won't give you an error. If you console log what you get from get collection, I'm actually really curious if it strips off the unknown fields, because I think it only keeps the data it knows about.
Yeah, so it stripped out.
You can change that.
I would like to change that, because one of the things that always gets me is when you've got a piece of data that is no longer used, but then it's very hard to validate that data is no longer used. So you just like leave it. And that's how I found a lot of bigger teams end up with append only files, is that they're not sure how to do it. So if I want to refuse unknown front matter, I want this to error, how would I do that?
I think so. We'll go back to the config file where your schema is. If I remember right, so I know Zod has hanging off of z.object, you can do .passthrough, which would keep anything that it doesn't recognize, and it basically just it's like REST parameters almost. It just copies over the unknown fields.
Okay, so this will keep it, and if I go to index.astro and do the thing again, blog.data.
So it won't know the type here, but the data would have existed. There's no way for TypeScript to know that field exists because Zod doesn't know about it.
I got you. Okay,
but the data is at least there.
I got you.
Now I think Zod might have a .strict helper coming off of that object, and that might be what tells it to throw an error if there's unknown properties. I know there's a helper function for it in there.
.strict. Somewhere. Okay.
Yeah.
And now, so that was that error there. Unrecognized keys in object, new thing. Perfect. Okay, so that's exactly what I wanted to happen. I wanted it to yell at me if I'm using a piece of front matter that I'm not supposed to. So .strict is the thing. Okay, then if I set, what if I don't set this one? Then it yells that categories is required. What if I don't want categories to be required?
So they have helpers for that too. It's like they have helpers for everything you could possibly want
It's
to validate.
as
It's
if
crazy.
they have thought through that people would
They
use
really
these
have.
things. No,
It's like
okay,
it wasn't
so
just a weekend hacking project.
Okay, so categories. This is what I want to be true. Like if it comes in, it needs to be an array of one of these 3 values. But I want it to, if it's not there, we should just return an empty array, right?
Yeah, so you can do a couple things. The easiest here is just after the z.array call, add .optional, and you're telling it maybe categories exist, maybe it doesn't. Don't yell at me about it.
Okay.
And this would be
now
similar
it's not
to
yelling.
like TypeScript, right? So this would basically be building the TypeScript type of like it's an array or it's undefined. But if you always want to make sure it's an array and you're just defaulting to an empty array, you can do that too.
Okay, so I'm saving this, and it's giving me undefined. So I want it to be an array.
Yep.
And I would do that by...
So take off the .optional we added and replace it with a .default function call and just pass it an empty array.
Okay.
And that should do the trick. That's just making sure it's always at least something.
Now we're getting an empty array.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. And it's not mad. And it's not mad if the category is left empty on purpose. Great. I thought we might need to mark this one as optional, but it looks like we don't, which is excellent.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So that's great. That makes me feel good about this because it lets us do things like just skip the front matter that we don't need without throwing an error if it is in fact optional, like a category.
Yep.
And then we can get real strict on stuff. Like we can make sure that no unused fields are passed through. No categories that we haven't defined get passed through. That's all great. All right, so now I think we're ready. Let's go build that blog page. So to do that, I'm going to make a guess that it's in this pages directory.
Yep, you got it. So we do, like, Astro has always had kind of file-based routing. So you'd end up with a folder called blog, and inside of it, it would be in square brackets, like slug.astro.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay, so I've got my slug.astro, and then I'm going to make an assumption that we're going to do something in the front matter, so I'll make that little block.
Yep.
And then what is the... I'm going to get the layout.
So
we'll just stick that up here. Oops. Layout. And what needed to go on the layout? It was a title.
I think it was just a title. Yep.
Okay, so I want the title to be my blog title. So I'm going to wait on that. We need that. So we'll do the rest of the layout after that, but I need this to be... Oh, you need to go up a layer. Yeah, okay. So we need to get one blog post based on whatever the slug is. So in this particular case, when I do /blog/first, the slug here is going to match that first, and then we can use that to look up the blog post, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And we're doing this as a static build. This step gets a little different if you're using SSG versus SSR.
Okay.
We'll do it the static build here. It's your blog. You don't need server-side rendering for that.
Exactly. Okay.
So go ahead and import just so we have the helper function around. You're going to import again from Astro content, and I want to say it's called get entry by slug.
We can check. Nope, not like that. We can't. Like this. Get entry by slug.
Yep. And for static builds, the key here is the route needs to know all of the different blog pages you're going to be spitting out as part of the static build. So Astro looks for you to export a function called getStaticPaths. And you'll just export it straight out of this front matter.
Okay, so I'm exporting.
You'll probably want to mark it as async.
Okay, async function get static paths.
Yes.
Okay. Probably, do I need any?
I don't think you'll use them here. In fact, let me pull up our docs just to double check because we have a bunch of stuff on that one too.
So if we're going to tell it to get the static paths, wouldn't we need all of the posts?
Right. So this is where the performance question gets really interesting.
Okay.
So you want to know all of the different blog posts that need to be built, but this doesn't matter as much with the static build. If your build's a little bit slower, who cares? But with SSR, if you had to scrub and render 100 markdown files to find the one that you needed, you got a real performance problem there because your server is going to be a lot slower. So get entry by slug, which we're going to use here, will find all the blog posts and it'll give you back their front matter. It doesn't render the HTML right away. It just gives you back the front matter and kind of a hook to render only the blog post you want.
Gotcha. Okay, that is excellent. All right, so
so let's do something like const all blog posts, I guess, or all posts. And we'll actually also need get collection in here.
Okay, and I'm going to await that, right?
Yeah.
I want my blog. Love that auto completes.
Yep.
Okay.
And all you'll really need to do here, because this is a pretty simple one, get static paths returns an object, an array. And it's an array of objects with the parameter. So in this case, just an array of objects saying what the different slugs are. So you'll return, probably do all posts.map.
Is it params?
Just to walk through all of them.
Return.
Yeah, each object.
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, so you want to walk through each post that's there, and we're basically just going to spit back out the slug that comes from each entry.
Okay. So we are going to return the object, and that has is it params?
It has a key. It's called params, and that's also an object.
That's also an object.
Yep. And so we named the file slug.astro, which is why we're using slug here. It actually could be whatever you wanted to call it there.
As long as this one and this one match, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We use the params object to figure out which file to render.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're doing that, and then do we pass anything else?
You can pass back the props here. And if we do, we just actually wouldn't need to call get entry by slug at all. So along with params, this object could have a props object on it.
So we could do it like this, and then we would just put the post in like that?
You give it an object. Yeah, I'd probably just do it that way and go for the shorthand.
Okay.
So at this point, Astro knows all of the different pages you're going to build.
Got it. Did you want to do it a different way to show off the get entry by slug?
Let's do it this way first, and then we'll just kind of show how get entry by slug would work, because that'll be what people usually reach for SSR.
Okay. So when I've done this, it might complain. It's not complaining. I'm going to click on this, and we get something empty because I haven't put anything on the screen yet. But if I were to put something on the screen, like for example, oops. To do. And then close that tag again. We get it back. So now we need to actually get the pieces in, and I need to access the post, right?
Yep. Okay. So after that get static paths function, just drop down, and it already exists at this point on the Astro global when it's trying to render out this page for you. So you can do const and destructure the object. So you're looking for post.
And it's on the
equals,
global.
I think it's just astro.props.
Astro.props. Okay, so I can get the posts now, and there it is. So then I can do what I wanted up here, which was post dot. Wait.
And there's a trick here because
I'm missing my autocomplete. I'm panicking.
So astro.props, it's really tricky to try and feed that type through. I'm hoping that at some point we can find a good solution. It just knows that's any. I usually typecast the astro.props call. So at the end, I'll do equals astro.props as, and I'll give it an object type.
Okay.
So as, and you'll tell it has a post.
Oh no, it has a post. That's what I need. Post.
And there's going to be a type that you can pull out of the Astro content layer. I believe it's collection entry.
Collection entry. Yep, there it is.
Yep. And you give it a little, like the angle brackets.
Pointy boys.
You can tell it the collection type. Yep. So the little pointy boys. Give it log.
And it auto completes yet again.
Yep. Yep. So hopefully one day we'll be able to hook that up for you.
And there's,
especially when you're doing
all of
this
our
static.
autocomplete now.
Yep.
So now we've got everything. I'm going to drop in my title. We'll do. I'm just going to save it and see what happens when I do this. It updated the
there
front matter title,
makes
but not
really
the
hard.
rest. So we can do. Where am I? Here. Post data title. We can jump down a little bit and do a I don't know, we'll do a category. I'm realizing now I probably wanted my categories to be not an array, but that's all right. We're gonna make it work anyways. We'll do a post.data.categories.join, and we'll join them with whoops, one of those. All right, and then I'm gonna skip the summary, and instead what I want is to show the content of the post, which, as far as I know, we don't have. Like, will post body just work? I'm guessing that won't.
Post body is basically the raw markdown. Yeah. But if you open back up that autocomplete, post.render is a function.
Post.render. And that is.
I'll usually do this in the front matter. Yep.
Okay, so we want this in the front matter because I'm going to need to await it.
Yeah, so, inline JSX function calls to me is just too hard to follow.
Okay, so I don't know what that's going to return just yet, so I'll do one of these, and then I'm going to set equals await, and then drop in this post.render, and let's see what's in here. So I'm going to hit Control Space, and we get the remark plugin front matter, the headings, which this headings is really useful because if you want to build a table of contents or something, like that's it. There's your table of contents. And then we've got the content, which I'm assuming is my actual content. I can see here that it's an Astro component. So would I just drop it right in here?
So you'll pull that out of there and you drop it in just like any other Astro component where you're wanting to render the body. That's all you got to do.
Sick. Okay, that's extremely helpful. Okay, so then that kind of changes the way we want to do this because we got our script right in there. And then if I add in one of my categories, do one of these, do one of these, and break it. Not allowed. You got to do one of the allowed categories. Okay, so I've been rescued from myself. We're showing our categories. We're showing all these pieces, and I can do something to the effect of, we'll just add like a, is there a preferred way to do local links? Like if I'm just doing an ahref, is that preferred, or is there like
just always use anchor href. There is no link component stealing how browsers route in a static site.
Got it. Nope, that's not the one. Oh God, everybody look at my keyboard. What is the ampersand? Oh God. Ampersand?
That might be on a layer.
Woo. All right. Yep, on a layer. Here we go. We're going to this one. There's no ampersand on this layer either. Oh no. Hold on. Oh wait, I can cheat by looking at my other keyboard. It's who knew this would be my undoing?
The ampersand ruined the ergo docs for you.
Back to all posts. And there we go. All right. So now we've got a like mostly navigable, nice setup, right? This is,
Yep.
we can get around in posts. And then if I wanted to make another one of these, I can come out here and copy paste. We'll change this one to second and another one. This one will get category 3. And that's when you know you're really blogging, when you write that second post.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've got our content collections are here. We're rolling type safe. We've got, I can't add junk in here. If I try to add junk, I get warnings, and I'm gonna add a little bit more junk here for the sake of showing off these error overlays, because we didn't actually give them a fair look. I think I saw Erica in the chat a minute ago. Let's break it. So we'll do bad, no, and now it's going to yell. And let's just take a moment to look at these gorgeous error overlays.
Right? Yeah. Really pull that thing window open. Let's look at that. We even got Houston hiding up in the corner.
Yeah, this is great. So we've got a dark mode and a light mode switch, which is awesome. It's running on my dev server, which I don't know. I think I confused it. Yeah, now it's dark mode. I won't toggle it back to light mode. But we have a useful heading as the error message. We've got a really easy to parse piece of context, a link to the docs, which is just chef's kiss.
Yep.
Actually shows you your code, which is wonderful, and then gives you the full dump of the error code as well, which is also, it's useful as a if you like reading error stack traces, you want to be able to have access to it. And this is pretty excellent.
Yeah, it's very cool the way this bubbles up, and it's always tricky, Astro supporting every framework that's out there, but you'll see React errors, Svelte errors, Vue errors get bubbled up here in a really nice way, kind of giving you as much context as it can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is slick. And again, it's little things like this, I think, that really help when you're trying to adopt a new framework, when you're trying to get your feet wet with something new, when you can tell that the framework authors have taken the time to consider not just what happens when you know it all, but what happens when you don't. What happens when you're going to be stumbling all over the place, you're going to be doing things wrong, you're going to put something in the wrong place. What is that experience? What's my experience of making a mess, and how much do you help me as a framework clean up my own mess? And this is, I think, just a really nice touch that makes me feel like I'm going to be okay. I can't make that big a mess in Astro. Jaguar is asking, you can choose the libraries, you can use React or Svelte. Yeah, you can, because we can use just about anything at this point. React, Svelte, Solid, Vue. What else? Preact,
Lit element, custom element framework.
Yeah, pretty slick.
Yeah, there's a community driven Angular integration that gets you Angular support.
And that's incredible. Yeah, how is that possible is an answer that's going to take a little bit more than we have time for. But I do think I'm gonna be harassing y'all about doing a follow-up episode where we build a plugin for Astro, because I think that would be really, really fun.
Yeah.
The team is trying to get you to say xElement, and I don't know why.
Is that Peter? Is that Fuzzy?
It is.
So xElement is actually a very cool, it almost inlines custom element kind of features through an Astro component.
Oh, interesting.
It feels like you're using custom elements. It feels kind of like you're using a different framework, but it's actually inlining scripts directly on the DOM for you.
That's super cool. All right, so I think at that I'm going to call this one a resounding success. We were able to build out a fully type safe Markdown front matter blog. We wrote out our Zod definitions. We fed those into our Astro site so that we were able to kind of write these and then get our autocomplete throughout the post. We generated the single blog page posts, and we generated a blog roll, all using these collections. So this is a really nice API, and I like it because it doesn't prevent me from doing what I want to do, which is write Markdown. And it lets me add some safety to the way that I write Markdown so that I can't make quite as big a mess by having the no rules that typically applies to a Markdown file. So Tony, is there anywhere else that people should go if they want to dig deeper into all of this?
Yeah, they definitely check out our docs. The docs team, both people in the Astro core team, but also a ton of community members spend so much time building what I would say is like the best docs experience out there right now. It is crazy the amount of detail that we go into here and the different language support. So the content collections that Ben also spent a ton of time as part of getting this feature out, actually documenting it, which is harder than you think when you're just like, oh, I'm going to code this feature and kick it out the door.
Yes. That's the downfall of so many projects. Is like, oh, well, I'll document it once I'm done, and then it's never done, so it never gets documented.
What's the problem of like domain-driven development, where you just buy a sweet URL and then eventually you come up with an idea on a weekend and you build it and you never document it and it never goes anywhere?
What did I say in the pregame about no personal attacks on the show, Tony?
that is how our whole team operates. No, you're in good company. Nate and Chris on our team are like experts at finding crazy domain names that should not be available for $30.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, so I am going to send everyone your way one more time. Make sure you go and give Tony a follow on the old Twitter. And remember, it's a month lag. And make sure you go over to the Discord because, can I get to, here it is. The Discord, because that is where all the magic happens. There's a really active community over there. Great place to go if you're learning, if you're building, if you want to show things off, you want to get some feedback. Hang out in the Astro Discord. It's pretty wonderful. Tony, anything else that you want to include before I take us home?
I don't think so. I hear we have some interesting hybrid routing streaming coming up here soon.
Yes, we are going to we're going to go raid Ben Holmes on his channel because they're going to keep the Astro train going with some hybrid rendering stuff. This episode, like every episode, has been live captioned. We've had Rachel here from White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. And that's made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, New Relic, Pluralsight, all kicking in to make this show more accessible. Thank you so much for sending me money so that I can spend it on making the show better. Tony, thank you for spending some time with us today. This was an absolute blast. Chat, as always, thank you all so much for being good sports and playing along and watching me struggle on this new dang keyboard. I think that's it. I think we're done. Tony, thank you very much. Y'all, we'll see you next time.